Please remember to give the video a thumbs up, share your insights in the comments, and subscribe to keep up with our newest narratives. At 62, I never thought I would experience something like this. At this point in life, one would expect things to follow a certain routine. My days are filled with nurturing my garden in the mornings, enjoying peaceful reading in the afternoons, and sharing evenings with my husband Henry as we reflect on our past together. However, one night, a personal discussion transformed everything, making me reconsider my previous beliefs. The journey began at a corporate gala organized by Henry's company. After more than 30 years of service, he had climbed the corporate ladder with steadfast commitment. Charles Whitman, his boss, exuded a calm sense of authority, a figure with whom I had only shared courteous greetings at past gatherings. In his early 60s, he stood tall and distinguished, exuding a sense of quiet confidence that appeared completely natural. The event took place at a luxurious hotel in the heart of Boston, where the magnificent chandeliers illuminated the sophisticated guests in their formal attire. The atmosphere buzzed with lively chatter, the sound of glasses clinking, and the gentle tunes of a jazz band playing softly in the corner. Though I wasn't especially enthusiastic about these gatherings and favored the familiarity of my own space, Henry had been quite persuasive. So I reluctantly donned a simple navy blue dress and consented to join him. At first glance, everything appeared to be just as it always was. Henry engaged in conversations with his coworkers, while I found myself conversing with the other partners. Everything changed when Charles came into my life. "Helen, could I steal a moment of your time?" he inquired, his rich voice cutting through the noise of the room. I paused. A moment? What could Henry's supervisor possibly need from me? Yet, I offered a courteous smile and nodded, trailing behind him as he guided me down a side passage, distancing us from the main ballroom. The atmosphere was more serene in this place, the lively chatter of the gala gradually diminishing in the background. He led me into an intimate lounge, a warm space adorned with soft lighting, a crackling fireplace, and inviting leather chairs. The atmosphere carried an unexpected seriousness, quieter than the celebration outside. My heart raced slightly as I settled into the chair opposite him. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything significant," he remarked, giving a slight, somewhat anxious smile. "Not at all," I replied, even though I couldn't quell the curiosity stirring within me. "What are you thinking?" He let out a sigh, his hands rubbing together as if he were trying to find the right words. Finally, he said, "It's about Henry." At that moment, I sat up straighter in my chair, feeling a knot form in my stomach. "Is something bothering you?" He paused. "Not really. However, there's a crucial piece of information I believe you need to hear." I sensed the gravity of his words even before they left his lips. His expression held a weight that made me uneasy, a subtle fervor that caused my heart to race. "Helen," he said, his tone soft yet resolute. "I've been acquainted with Henry for many years. I've seen him cultivate his professional journey, uplift his peers, and nurture his loved ones. Amidst everything, I've observed a significant realization." I took a deep breath. "What is it?" He inclined his body a bit, his eyes fixed intently on me. "He doesn't value you as he ought to." The statement hit me hard, settling like a weight in my heart. I struggled to breathe. A rush of protectiveness surged through me. I can't comprehend," I faltered. "Henry has always been a wonderful husband," Charles agreed. "I understand that. But tell me, Helen, when was the last moment he genuinely recognized your essence, not merely as his wife, but as the remarkable woman you are?" I tried to speak, yet found myself at a loss for words. He went on, his tone gentler at that moment. "I can tell how you gaze at him when he's preoccupied and unaware. I've seen you linger in the shadows at gatherings like this, as he immerses himself in his job. You pour out so much, but does he ever reciprocate?" A tightness gripped my throat. I felt the urge to argue, to assert that he was mistaken, yet a part of me trembled with uncertainty. "I hope I'm not intruding," Charles remarked, leaning back a bit. Yet there are moments when an outsider perceives what those within cannot. I breathed out gently, my thoughts swirling. Charles examined my expression, then gave a subtle, understanding smile. Helen, you deserve to be acknowledged. Those words resonated deeply, awakening a part of me I didn't know was there. For the first time in ages, I found myself uncertain about my emotions. I remained still, unable to move. Charles's words stayed with me, prompting a depth of reflection I hadn't anticipated. You deserve to be seen. Emotional vulnerability is fine, but in context, it could imply a seduction arc. I tried to dismiss his words as just an observation, a kind gesture that missed the mark. Yet, deep within, I sensed he was speaking a truth I could no longer ignore. Henry was a decent man, a diligent provider. He had consistently been dependable and steadfast. Yet in those still moments, the ones that held significance, when was the last time he genuinely saw me? When had he last acknowledged the little efforts I made to keep our life vibrant and nurturing? The way I meticulously folded his shirts just as he preferred, the manner in which I surrounded our home with his cherished belongings, the way I remained by his side during each professional success and took a step back. I cleared my throat, suppressing the lump that had formed there. Charles raised a hand, halting my words. I don't want to make you feel uneasy, Helen. However, I felt compelled to speak up. I exhaled slowly and acknowledged your sincerity. I finally spoke, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. Yet, Henry and I have shared our lives for many years. A marriage encompasses more than mere visibility. It revolves around dedication and a sense of security. Charles acknowledged this. I understand, and I admire that. He leaned in a bit, his eyes steady. But have you ever considered what you genuinely desire? The question hung in the air around us. For so long, my attention was consumed by Henry's needs, the demands of our marriage, and the expectations placed upon me. I never really took the time to consider my own desires. I released a soft, anxious chuckle. Charles, this is certainly an unexpected discussion for a corporate gala. That brought a smile to his face. I guess it is. Yet, there was a feeling inside me urging me to express it. A pause lingered in the air, accompanied solely by the gentle crackling of the fire. He let out a deep sigh as he rose to his feet. I suppose I should let you return, he said. I also stood, my hands trembling slightly as I adjusted my dress. Indeed, Henry will be curious about my whereabouts. Charles acknowledged this with a nod, yet his expression held an enigmatic quality. Helen made me promise one thing, though. I moved my head slightly. What's that? Please don't brush off my words. Reflect on it. After a moment of doubt, I finally agreed with a slow nod. He responded with a gentle smile and moved aside, indicating the way out. As I strolled by him, I sensed the comforting aura of his presence next to me, the heaviness of our earlier discussion lingering in my heart. The gala continued to buzz with energy when I made my way back. Henry remained right where I had left him, engrossed in dialogue with his peers. Initially, he was unaware of my presence. I lingered at a distance for a while, observing him. His expressions were lively and his hands gestured expressively as he communicated. There was a part of him I had always cherished, his enthusiasm, his determination. Yet, I recalled Charles's words. Had Henry ever regarded me in that manner? When he finally turned his gaze in my direction and noticed me standing there, he offered a brief nod before returning to his discussion. A change stirred within me. Charles had sown a seed, and despite my efforts to dismiss it, I could sense it starting to flourish. The journey back was silent. Henry was next to me, his hands tightly holding the wheel, his eyes locked on the shadowy path ahead. The city lights flashed by in a haze, yet my thoughts wandered far away. Charles's words resonated in my mind. his voice lingering in a way that was impossible to ignore. You are worthy of recognition. I caught a glimpse of Henry. He appeared weary, a subtle line of tension etched between his eyebrows. After almost 4 decades of marriage, I knew every contour of his face by heart. The defined angles of his jaw, the crinkling of his eyes when he laughed, the way his lips would press together in thought. Yet, I couldn't recall the last moment he truly gazed at me. He cleared his throat, shattering the stillness between us. The question took me by surprise. He posed it after every event, every gathering, every dinner party, almost as if it were a duty rather than a sincere inquiry. I paused before responding. It was intriguing. He nodded without really paying attention. All right, all right. And just like that, the discussion came to a close. I shifted my attention back to the window, observing the city fade into the distance as we headed toward the serene suburbs. Upon arriving home, Henry followed his usual routine. He removed his jacket, placed his keys on the counter, and disappeared into his office for a final look at his emails. I lingered in the kitchen for a while, gazing at the vacant spot he had just occupied. I didn't feel anger towards him, not really. Henry had always been like this, committed to his job, consistent in his habits. He had provided me with a comfortable and stable existence. Yet Charles's words had stirred something within me, something I could no longer suppress. I made my way to the bedroom and noticed my reflection in the mirror. At the age of 62, my hair, once a vibrant auburn, now bore silver strands. Subtle lines adorned my face, each one a testament to the life I had experienced. Yet my eyes remained unchanged. Within them, I discovered a feeling I hadn't recognized in ages: isolation. I had always thought this was simply a part of getting older, this subtle retreat into the shadows, this slow descent into monotony. But now, for the first time, I questioned if that was truly the case. The following morning, as Henry departed for work, he kissed me on the cheek and said, "I'll be home late. A significant client meeting is approaching." I acknowledged it with a slight smile. "Okay, then. Take care." And then he disappeared. I lingered in the doorway for a while before retreating back inside. Typically, my days were consumed by errands, housework, or tending to the garden. However, today was different. I felt an unsettling restlessness. Without allowing myself to overthink it, I picked up my phone and called a number I never imagined I would. Charles picked up on the second ring. "Helen?" There was a hint of surprise in his voice. I inhaled deeply. "Would you like to grab a cup of coffee?" There was a moment of silence. Then, gently, he replied, "Certainly." An hour later, I was seated across from him at a serene cafe by the lake. The aroma of roasted coffee and freshly baked pastries filled the air. Outside, the autumn leaves swirled gracefully in the wind. Charles regarded me with a gentle, inquisitive gaze. I found myself uncertain about whether I would receive a message from you. As I stirred my coffee, I observed the cream swirling and merging with the deep brown liquid. I also questioned if I would make the call. He nodded, patiently awaiting my response. I took a deep breath, letting it out slowly. "Your words have been on my mind." His face was a mask of emotions. I paused for a moment, then locked eyes with him. "You were correct." There was something thoughtful in his expression, a quiet empathy I hadn't felt in a long time. "Helen, I don't mean to imply that I have any regrets about my life," I interjected softly. "Henry and I have created something enduring, something authentic. Yet, at some point, I believe I lost touch with the desire to seek something for my own sake." Charles leaned in a bit. And now, I found myself struggling to breathe. Uncertainty hung in the air, a stillness enveloping us, punctuated only by the faint murmur of voices in the background. At last, Charles broke the silence, his tone soft. I genuinely wish for your happiness. I gazed at him, truly observing him. He was a man with no obligation to involve himself in my life, no reason to express the thoughts he had shared, other than the fact that he had recognized something within me that I had yet to see. In that moment, it hit me that I had a decision to confront. I looked across the table at Charles, focusing on the conversation as the steam from my coffee curled upward. All I desire is for you to find joy. His words lingered in the atmosphere, weighty yet soothing, akin to a realization I had been evading for an extended period. For many years, I convinced myself that being satisfied was sufficient, that safety, steadiness, and fidelity formed the foundation of a fulfilling life. And indeed, they did. Yet Charles's words reminded me that I hadn't asked myself what I wanted in a very long time. I inhaled deeply, the heaviness of my reflections bearing down on me. Charles, I'm overwhelmed by everything. His gaze became gentle. You don't need to do anything, Helen. Consider what truly brings you joy. When did you last engage in an activity solely for your own sake? I was about to answer, but paused. When was that moment? For years, I had dedicated myself to supporting Henry, prioritizing his career, his aspirations, and his entire existence. I had built a life filled with structure and predictability. Yet, I found myself questioning my own identity. As I took a sip of my coffee, the deep, bitter warmth offered a brief sense of stability. I realized I was uncertain of who I truly was, beyond the confines of my marriage. I found myself surprised by my own words. Charles offered me a subtle, understanding smile. Perhaps it's time to discover the truth. I released a soft, anxious chuckle. That seems daunting. Maybe it's time to be open to change, even if it's uncertain. I remained silent. I couldn't respond. Because deep inside, I understood he was correct. We remained quiet for a moment. Life outside continued its usual rhythm. Vehicles drove by, laughter echoed, and the breeze stirred the shimmering autumn leaves. Life had been a whirlwind, leaving little room for introspection. Yet, perhaps for the first time, I felt the urge to stop and reflect. I placed my cup down and locked eyes with him. I'm uncertain about what lies ahead, Charles. However, I realized that it's time for me to embrace life once more. A smile began to form at the edge of his mouth. All I wanted was for you to understand. When Henry returned that night, I was already at the kitchen table, waiting. He hardly glanced my way as he placed his briefcase down and loosened his tie. What a long day, he sighed. I'm so tired. I observed him for a moment. This person with whom I had shared my life, this person I had cherished for years. As he wandered through the house, I sensed an unbridgeable gap between us, one that had silently widened over time. I inhaled deeply. Henry, can we have a conversation? He hesitated, finally turning his gaze toward me. About what? I took a deep breath. About us? His eyebrows knitted together in confusion. What about us? I paused, then finally spoke the feelings that had been stirring within me since last night. I feel unseen, Henry. He blinked. What? I feel as though I've dedicated years to being the partner who supports you, who maintains order, who ensures that everything in our life remains stable, and I truly care for you. Yet, at some point, I faded from view. His expression shifted, revealing his surprise. Helen, what's happening here? I shook my head. It's been within me for ages. I just never allowed myself to voice it. He took a seat opposite me, his hand gliding over his face. I had no idea you were experiencing these feelings. I observed him intently. Have you ever thought about it? He remained quiet. In that instant, I understood something difficult. Henry wasn't an unkind husband. He didn't intend to be unkind or indifferent. He had merely believed, as I did, that marriage was about familiarity, that a sense of security was sufficient. We no longer felt the need to connect with each other as we used to. Yet, that wasn't truly living. That wasn't love. Not anymore. What do you mean? He finally inquired, his tone careful. I take a deep breath. I must begin to prioritize my own life once more. His expression dimmed a bit. Are you pulling away from me? I paused for a moment, then replied with a shake of my head. I'm uncertain about what lies ahead, Henry. However, I realize that I can't continue in this way. If we wish to make this marriage work, a transformation is necessary. He gazed at me intently, and after so many years, I finally noticed a spark in his eyes. Understanding. Perhaps there was an opportunity to mend things. Perhaps there wasn't. Yet, for the first time in many years, I felt prepared to discover the truth.